Good morning, everyone. It is 10:32, I believe, so we're going to get started. We don't want to keep you all here longer. And so I know you all have had plenty of sessions that you have been to yesterday and today. And so I will try to be as respectful to your time. We're going to be taking a look at Gear Up impacts and its outcome on its sub-awardee program, Dean's Future Scholars. Quick introduction about myself. My name is Manuel Ortiz. I am a child of a Nicaraguan immigrant mother, and I am also a Gear Up student myself. I received the Gear Up grant in 2007 when I graduated high school. It was $10K. I was really appreciative because it helped me pay for a portion of my college experience. I am also a Dean's Future Scholars individual myself. I was recommended in 6th grade, and so I grew up in the program, but I was also a Gear Up student. I am currently the newly assigned assistant director with the Dean's Future Scholars program, but I got there kind of like through this cycle. I was a DFS mentor. I became a GA through the Gear Up grant, and then I left for some time. You know how it is. You kind of see what's out there in the world. You try to find other jobs, and finally I came back where I am now. So I am really appreciative of this opportunity to speak with you all and kind of share my experience. As you can see, that is my newborn daughter on there. So she actually just turned 1 year, October 10th. So nice. I am missing her very much. She couldn't come. But if I had her here, she'd probably be up here helping me present. Along with me today, well, actually not along with me, but Jafeth Sanchez, she is our principal investigator. She is not able to be with us today, but she was one of the individuals that helped put this presentation together and also put the research behind us looking at the impacts and outcomes of the program. So that was a little bit about myself, but I want you all to just take a moment, and I know you probably at this point are like, we've done so many different introductions with so many different people, but we understand that the conferences are really an opportunity for us to network with one another. And so I want you all to just take a moment, just find somebody around you, and I want you to introduce yourself, provide them your name, where you're coming from, your Gear Up connection. So if you are a grant overseer or director, or maybe you work maybe at one of the schools as a counselor, whatever it may be, your Gear Up connection. And then I also want you to choose a superpower and why. So I want you to think, if you had the ability to choose from super speed, super strength, or flight, which one would you choose and why? Okay. So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to just discuss with somebody around you. It's just these 4 different areas, and then we'll come back and share. So if you all can do that at this moment, thank you.
How are you? Karen, I thought it was. I wanted to make sure.
Yes, I'm with the state office. That's where you are, right? So the way we do it in Montana is we have 18 schools that we oversee. Is that how you do it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We have Carl. We have Clark County, which is Las Vegas. And then we have Mineral County. So we have our school districts are divided by county.
Okay.
That was something we ended up doing when I was in Nevada. Well, I moved to Nevada.
And you all already know each other, right?
No, I don't know. I've never
Oh. Now you all are good friends.
Yeah.
No, literally, we just.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we're both from Idaho.
Oh, okay. What part of Idaho?
I'm from Bonners.
Okay.
So, tip top,
Yeah.
last town for Hit Canada.
Okay. The only part of Idaho that I know is Coeur d'Alene. My brother lives in Spokane, and so that's like, what, 30 minutes from there? So
Yeah,
that's the only part I know.
About an hour from Portland.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I like Boise's the other area.
No, super strength.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bonners is about 9 hours.
I can't remember.
So, 8 hours from Portland. But yeah.
Yeah. little panhandle up there, right? Like,
I would pick like two because there's so many people things to see.
And then you'd want somebody to like photograph.
It's just like
So yeah,
Done.
obviously from Montana.
give you about 1 more minute.
I was born in the Philippines. Raised in Superior, which is now a Europe school. And lived in Helen. Yeah. But I've lived down in the Las Vegas area. I've lived in Western Washington, or Spokane, for several years. Yeah, I've lived a lot of places. I don't even want to.
All right. Well, let's come back together here. Thank you all for sharing with your partners. Thank them for taking the time to listen to a brief story about where you're coming from. At this time, I would like to hear from the audience. If anybody is brave enough to just share their name, where they're coming from, their Gear Up connection, but also their superpower that they chose and why. Would anybody like to share? Yes.
I'm Karen, and I'm with the State of Montana Gear Up Office, and I oversee the schools, grant their budgets and implementation plans. Superpower, I wanted to fly because there's so many beautiful places to see, and I could just like fly in and see them up close, and then come on back to where I live.
Anybody else? You said flight, right?
Yeah. Like,
Anybody else choose flight? A lot of people choose flight. Anybody choose like strength? Anybody choose super strength? Nobody chose super strength. What about super speed?
Flight, super speed.
Flight, super speed, a mixture of the two?
Flying very fast. That's a yes.
Okay. Yeah, let's take one more. Anybody else would like to just share where they're coming from, their Gear Up connection? Yes.
My name is Jonna. I work with Nevada Gear Up. I'm the college coordinator. So I get to work with all 12,000 of our students. Our huge team, our schools. So we're at 8 schools, 2 districts, and we're at 7 institutions. I get to do a little bit of everything to everyone, which I actually really, really like. And superpower, I picked read minds so I can know how to better help my students because I don't know what they're thinking. So if I can get in there, that's my thought.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
I think you would regret that.
I know I might regret it later on, but
If you could turn it on and off.
right,
and
exactly, turn it on and off.
I think there was a movie, What Women Want,
Oh, yeah.
where there was a gentleman ends up being able to read the minds of the women, and then he regrets it after. So it's probably very similar, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
turning it on and turning it off would be very helpful.
Yes.
Well, this was just a brief exercise, but I want you to leave you all with this very cliche message, is that we may not have these superpowers as super flight, super speed, being able to read minds, but you all have the superpower of impacting students' lives. So whatever capacity you work in, just remember that you are influencing those students to achieve a higher purpose, to go on perhaps to post-secondary education. So take that as your superpower, the power of your influence. So as we get into the session objectives today, we're going to take an exploratory look, but first we have to complete the first 2 bullet points. We're going to take a look at the interesting collaboration, the unique collaboration between Gear Up and Dean's Future Scholars, and how that has impacted the Dean's Future Scholars programming. And then finally, at the end of this presentation, we'll take a look at the exploratory impacts and outcomes of Gear Up on such programming. So we usually like to begin with giving you a context of Nevada. I know some of you are from the state of Nevada. How many of you have visited Nevada before? Is that because most of you live there? No? Okay. You don't? Yes.
I did.
Oh, you do?
I did live there one
Okay.
I don't think they're allowed to talk about it.
What was that?
What happens in
Yes.
Vegas?
Yes. So that's usually an interesting talking point, is where you're from in Nevada as well. When most people think of Nevada, they usually think of Las Vegas, right? I'm actually further north. We're in a smaller area, the biggest little city in the world, Reno, Nevada. And so we usually like to use that as an illustration of how broad Nevada is. It's wide open area. So, but here is just some of the demographics to understand when we talk about Nevada. We usually say we're at the top of the worst list and the bottom of the best list. And we have among the lowest in post-secondary achievement among, nationally, 14%. Now, most or majority of the students that go to post-secondary institutions in the state end up coming from out of state. A majority of them come from California. We have a low diversity when we talk about our teacher administration ratios, but also 1 out of 3 of our Nevada families have at least one parent with a college degree. So there's usually, these numbers tend to fluctuate, but again, we tend to be typically in the bottom 10 nationally. I know that can seem a little doom and gloom when we think about our demographics, but one of the things that does give us hope and can have us striving for better is the work that Gear Up has done within the state. Gear Up has been in the state of Nevada since 2001. They have done a tremendous amount of work encouraging students, helping students receive access to different programming. It began, the first cycle of the program ended in 2007. This is the cycle that I was a part of. Interesting enough, during the first cycle, the students that started in 7th grade, their services ended in their junior year. But they did receive a $10K grant, which other students did not receive in subsequent cycles. You can also see further down, they have added a 7-year program or 7-year option. They started to notice that there was value in seeing them through to high school graduation and even offering that 7th year option during their first year of college. And they have seen a great impact in continuing those services. So this is why you will see the first cycle, that 5-year program, but then they increased high school graduation, but then the last 2 iterations, or the last iteration, or 2 iterations, they included that 7-year option. With this collaboration that Gear Up has done throughout the state, a university professor named Dr. Usinger saw the opportunity to expand Gear Up's influence, and they also were working with a grassroots program called Dean's Future Scholars at the time that started around the same time in the year 2000. And so what they saw was that there was this opportunity to collaborate and have their foot into more areas. Now, Dean's Future Scholars is not a school. It is not an institution. It's a program based out of the University of Nevada, Reno. And with that collaboration with Gear Up, they saw that they could not only just have one foot in K-12, but also in higher education. This long-term collaboration with Gear Up and DFS allowed for longitudinal data. It allowed for them to influence more students because now they had more schools to work with. It wasn't just limited to a certain district or a certain area of the city. It also provided research opportunities with Dean's Future Scholars having longitudinal data with students from 6th grade on. They were able to use that data to see what services helped, how they could improve those services. And so in this collaboration, this is where that research comes into place when we talk about programming. Not only did Gear Up collaborate with Dean's Future Scholars, but there was this collaboration between the 2 programs actually led to a whole plethora of other programs coming together. First off, Gear Up not only provided funding and support to personnel, and we understand that when it comes to grants, they're usually tied to specific things, right? It's either for programming or for certain services or personnel. It's hard to overlap when you talk about Gear Up funding. But Gear Up was very helpful in the sense that they said, you know what, whatever your program needs, use that grant portion to fill that need. It also helped in this collaboration in the sense that we had university evaluators taking a look at the program, taking a look at research and seeing what was helpful, what was not helpful. And it provided that special support. we were able to then, because of this partnership, have these special projects throughout the state. There was drones, a drones robotics camp that was done in the rural areas. We were able to go out and work with Elko County, with 9 counties, just the different counties, and do different programs. But again, the hub of the program was based out of Reno. There was, down here you can see these are all the different programs that came together because of Gear Up to work in conjunction with one another. This is just a breakdown as to how all of these programs, again, created this web of working together, Gear Up being a large part of the funding for Dean's Future Scholars. And you can see with that, other areas or other programs decided to also come into play and say, let's help build upon this program to further the influence. This is the Gear Up funding over the years. Mostly it has been used for personnel. So when we think about our mentors, when we think about our counselors, that's the main part of the program. Some of it does go into our operating budget, but again, personnel is our most important piece because we need our college mentors to be able to reach our students. And I'm gonna go a little bit over as to why that's so important a little bit later on in the slides. To kind of shift views a little bit, as we talked about Gear Up in this collaboration, why was it that they decided to work with Dean's Future Scholars at that time? Like I said, both programs came into the state around the same time. They were still in its infancy in the state. And during that time, there was a dean that came over from Texas Tech. He saw a program there, and he wanted to replicate that in the state. And so Dr. William Sparkman, he started the Dean's Future Scholars program. He was a dean for the College of Education. And originally, his vision for the program was to have students in the district become teachers. So it was this homegrown mentality where he wanted to diversify the school district, and he said, let's have our own students from our schools come to the university so then they can in turn go back and teach in our schools. Over time though, this kind of changed in the sense that it was no longer just for students that wanted to become teachers, but it became a program that was going to support students in whatever field they decided to follow. This is the mission of the Dean's Future Scholars Program. It mostly works with low-income first-generation students. Again, taking a look back at the context of Nevada, we can see the importance of that. When we think about being one of the lowest within the nation when it comes to students receiving a post-secondary education, the goal is to give them the tools necessary if they choose to go on to a college or a university. Ultimately, though, the main part of the program, the importance of it, is for them to graduate high school, to have the tools necessary to then take those next steps, whatever they decide to do. Whether it is to go to community college or university, to go into the workforce right away, or to even enlist in the military. Whatever it may be their goal, that's what the program is going to support them with. Students get selected for, not get selected, but they get recommended for the program in 6th grade by a teacher or a counselor. There is this partnership that Dean's Future Scholars has with the school district, and they send off the packets to the schools. Understanding that the counselors are the ones that deal day to day with the students, they want them to have that power to recommend certain students for the program. You may notice that certain students are recommended for other programs at different stages, but what makes this program unique is that they are recommended in the 6th grade, at the end of their 6th grade year from their teachers and counselors. Typically, the program works with Title I schools and again, that goes back to the mission, to empower low-income first-generation students. And so our Title I schools, they have that liberty to work through their student caseloads. They can work with other counselors. They can even talk to admin to make those recommendations for the program. There's really only 2 requirements for the program. Students have to qualify for free and reduced lunch, and they also have to be considered first generation. And we understand that first generation is defined differently depending on the context, right? In this sense, first generation is defined as neither parent having achieved a bachelor's degree. So they could have gone to college for some time, even attained an associate's degree, but it is mainly defined neither parent having received a bachelor's degree. One thing that is also unique about this is that dealing with our Title I schools, Dean's Future Scholars is a nonprofit program, and really focusing on not limiting the students and the recommendations by having certain barriers. And so we work with the Title I schools, understanding that majority of the students are going to be on free or reduced lunch, but also this is self-reported. The students do not, or the families do not have to turn in W-2s or tax forms. Unlike other programs, they just have to self-report that. And what we have found that is very helpful to the families, we can also help with certain undocumented students and families, and helping them with some of the barriers that they may face. Here's just a breakdown of the demographics. You can see to the far left, this is the breakdown of the DFS students currently in the program in comparison to Washoe County students and our DFS mentors. As you will notice, there is this cycle that we try to have, and you can see it within my own story, where our students get selected for the program. Hopefully they will graduate high school, go on to post-secondary education. And the hopes is that they will become mentors. So it's really this homegrown program where the same students that went through it will then later give back to the program by becoming mentors. A breakdown of our special populations are seen here. For our K-12 students, we work a lot with the different entities within the school district. We even work with different departments such as the Equity and Diversity Department to try to get special recommendations, understanding that some of our demographics may not be equitable. We may not be providing access to all students. And so we really try to be reflective and transparent when it comes to our demographics. Now, digging a little deeper into the program, there is really 4 key components to it. There is the mentoring aspect that happens during the academic school year when the students are at their school site. There is the summer enrichment program. So think of this as a summer camp. It is, well, depending on the grade, they could either be there for 3 weeks or 6 weeks. And then there is the summer academic program for our high school students, where they can do credit recovery, credit advancement. There's the youth college internship program for students that are graduating high school. And then there's also extra college support services for our first year college students. Again, thinking back to the early years of Gear Up, where it ended in their junior year, seeing the value of continuing that on to their first year of college. Now, the first part of that component is the college mentoring aspect that happens during their academic year. So let me dig a little deeper as to what that looks like. But first, I want you all to just think about a mentor in your life. Think about somebody that has influenced you. And maybe write their name down and take a moment to answer these 2 questions. So write down the name of the individual that was a mentor to you. How did this mentor relationship impact or benefit you the most? So just take a moment to do that. And then what I want you to do is just share the second one. You don't have to share the name, but just the impact that this mentor has had in your life. Just turn to a shoulder partner and share with them the impact that your mentor had in your life. So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to just discuss the second part of this question.
My mentor, Exploratory.
Her name is
College program.
She had like 2 younger kids. She had just had me. And so I was like the only person on trust with her kids. So she was amazing with her kids. So I was like, oh my parents, my parents will pay for it.
So don't just do it.
Job early. And like I was in college, like staying in contact.
And I always hold her, I have a lot of answers here.
And then when I was moving back to Philly, I was back home and sending her and I
Like that.
and then when I moved back to Vegas, I helped to clean my apartment through COVID. So like nothing really
I know, well, my mom's already looking at
the apartment.
Is that a really good one?
She had always these distractions. So I just joke that she's like my mom. But she would just hear off us and then like reach out and change her. When I was like just but always like
I never played basketball.
I'm like, hey, we get basketball. My mom would
Every day, so.
So yeah, she was like the first person who was there's another one, Victoria, and she practiced.
I would think at that age.
And it was like many years of
Sports. To be the helper of the coach. So that was kind of interesting. So you don't always have to follow the same path. Help.
No, when my
Yeah. So years invited you to listen to, how long was the mentoring?
He's doing a mentoring program.
Give you all about 30 seconds just to wrap up your discussion.
He was going to speak at a conference, and I was in the same town, so I had a rental car, so we had to, you can be down here working at cars and drive.
All right. Well, let's come back together. And so I kind of heard some of the discussions. Some of you mentioned it was a family member. Some of you mentioned it was a teacher, a counselor. And I just want you all to just take a moment, maybe share with me who was a mentor to you. You don't have to say their name, but just how they impacted your life. Let me hear from an individual, anybody that would like to volunteer. Yes.
So my mentor was Terry Wolf, and he was my forest extension agent when I was a youngster, and I was in 4-H for 10 years, and he was there my whole time, and he invested in me. He'd take me to camps and do all sorts of things to support me, which is awesome.
Thank you. How about one more individual? It's okay. I'm not going to pull anybody's hand. It's okay. But as we can see, hopefully you all got to see, your mentor was this individual that perhaps had this belief in you. They provided you with their experience to kind of help you along the way. But also that the mentor, the individual, came in many different sizes, shapes. They came from many different backgrounds, and perhaps they were in different positions, right? So there is different mentoring types or models. One of the things is that we understand that the mentoring models, every single one of these mentoring models can be successful in different contexts. The one that DFS has adopted is this near-peer mentoring model. Now, what does that mean? The near-peer mentoring model is taking our college students and having them mentor the high school students or the K-12 students. And so the name comes from in the fact that they're almost near in age. They're not their peers, but they're close enough. They have just navigated through this process of graduating high school, applying to college, filling out the FAFSA, all the confusion that comes with your first year of college. So they're right there in the thick of it. And now, in turn, they're sharing their experiences with the K-12 students. The mentoring program for Dean's Future Scholars, it is an on-site mentoring program. So the college mentors, they go to the campuses, they go to the different schools to mentor the students. There's 411 K-12 students currently going through the program from 34 different schools. And so the students are recommended from 9 Title I schools, but then after that, as natural as it is, they kind of go everywhere throughout Washoe County. And the mentors, they follow them wherever they may go. The mentors, they go to the schools twice a month, and they talk to the students about 3 different topics. They could either talk about academics, so they take a look at their grades. They talk about college and career readiness, so they may come with activities for college and career exploration. They have them sometimes sit at the computer and look at what is it that they might be interested in. They also talk about their personal life in the sense that, is there anything else that they need help with? They try to build a connection with the family, understanding that there needs to be this partnership, not just with the school, but also with the families to help the student. There is currently 22 college mentors at the university, and they all are from various degrees. And so they try to relate their current journey to their students. And so we are very, we take a lot of pride in that, in the sense that our students, they are first generation themselves. Most of them are DFS alumni. They can connect with their students in the sense that they can say, I was a DFS student just like you. I went through this just like you. Here's my experience. And they're sharing that experience with their students, and their students look up to them. We see them build these long-term relationships, and that's really our goal. Again, I want to highlight that Gear Up has made this possible in the sense that providing the funding, providing the model, and this collaboration to sustain this for this many years. The second component of our summer, yes?
Sorry, backing up to the mentoring. Do you pay the mentors?
Yes.
The funding?
Mhm.
You share like what wage per hour, or is it a flat fee? What do you pay them?
Yeah, so it has varied from year to year, but normally we try to pay them more than what other college campuses jobs would pay. And so for the University of Nevada, Reno, a typical college job would be, you would start around $9, right? We would start them off at like $13 an hour. And our goal is to, first off, understanding that they're first generation college students, that there is this difficulty in balancing work and school, right, along with their personal lives. And so we try to keep them on campus in the sense that we are their employer. They're going to go out, they're going to talk to students. And we have seen great success in that with our students. We can usually intervene if our college mentors are kind of not slacking off, but we see them kind of veering off their journey in the sense that we can provide them these extra supports. And this is why we like that near-peer mentoring model, because not only does it help the students in K-12 in the sense that they look up to these individuals and they can connect with them, but also our college mentors themselves get this benefit of, I have to be responsible. Somebody is looking up to me. And it gives them this sense of purpose and belonging. So we have, the hours have ranged from 10 hours a week to 15 hours a week. And then we try to connect them with other internships on campus to kind of fulfill those other needs. So again, for our campus, students, workers are only allowed to work 20 to 25 hours per week if they're a student. And so we try to stay within that age range or that time range, yes.
Will you keep track of those 411 students and see how many of those kids enter college?
Yes. We track them from the moment they get into the program. We track them year by year. We have this database, and we work with Gear Up to try to provide this longitudinal data. With this collaboration, we're going to see at the end, it has been helpful not only to have Gear Up, but also being in partnership with the University of Nevada, Reno, because we're able to work with individual researchers, those PIs, to kind of conduct those researches. So,
Are you going to show us data too?
at the end, yes.
Good.
Yes. I will show you the data, the outcomes, and the impacts. So, The second component of our Dean's Future Scholars program is our summer enrichment program. This is for our middle school students. We bring them on for 3 weeks at a time, so usually it's our 7th graders first for 3 weeks and then our 8th graders for 3 weeks. And our main goal of this portion of the program is to build relationships, is to bring them on campus, get them exposed to the college life, but mainly it is to build those relationships. Understanding that if we connect with them early, it can make a big impact later. Here is just an example of some of the things that we do with our students. We take them on college tours, we have them see the residential halls, we bring in guest speakers, we do STEM activities. We do what's called Pack Attack, which is it's our PE class. We even take them on field trips to expose them to different areas of the city, understanding that perhaps some of our students have never been outside of their own community, so we really try to expose them to this larger world. The next part of our program is our summer academic program. This is for our high school students or our rising 9th graders on. We bring them on for 6 weeks, and what we really focus on is the math courses. Understanding that there is research that says those math courses are the gatekeepers for a lot of students. If they can do well in these math courses, this can open the door to them receiving certain scholarships. It can help them in their first year of college with remedial classes. And so we've taken that research and have applied it to our programming. Here's just some of the classes that we offer. Algebra 1, our geometry, Algebra 2. In the past, we have offered trigonometry and calculus. Sometimes we have to adapt our programming for the state's requirements. So there was certain end of course exams that had to come in place where we couldn't offer those classes anymore, but that's a year by year basis. We take a look at that to see what we can offer. Along with that, we partner with our community college to offer 2 dual credit courses, our Bio 100 and our Psych 101. And the students, they come to campus to take these courses. So they are there from like 10 o'clock till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The classes themselves usually are 4 hours, but in the morning time, they receive our wraparound services. There is 2 college mentors per class to help them along the way. So what we have seen is that our students, they want to come to our summer program. And it's not usual that we would see students say, I'll give up 6 weeks of my summertime to come and take summer school. That's really what it is. But because we have engaged with them early on, and they have built those relationships not only with the mentors, but also with their cohorts, they are willing to come to campus and be in class for 4 hours during the day. And so the mentors, they work with the teachers. They're kind of a teacher's aide during that time to look at their grades, help them during their tests. And so they're guiding them at every step of the way.
Is this all on your campus, or is it throughout just people at their own high school campuses?
No, so we try to expose them to college, and so all of our classes, all of our programming during the summer is conducted at the university.
So they stay on the university, the dorms?
Well, they leave at 5, so they get on the bus and then they go home. But then they come back the next day. The high schoolers, they come around 10, and that's when they receive their tutoring services for about 2 hours, and then they go to class in the afternoon. We provide food for them. The important thing that I forgot to mention is because that collaboration with GEARUP and other entities, we're able to offer this free of charge to all of our students. So they don't have to pay for anything, any of these services. The only thing that is not done at the university is the on-site college mentoring that's done during the academic school year. Any other, yes?
Do you offer it as a virtual option for like rural students that possibly can't come drive in or whatever? Or what do you do for those students?
We have offered certain robotics camps that occur during the academic year virtually. Because we right now only have this partnership with Washoe County in the sense of where students are recommended from. They are recommended from 9 Title I schools within the district, and so they're usually local. We are looking into expanding that. The program just received a $4 million grant from the last legislative session to, it's going to be called Nevada First Gen Network. That's going to hopefully work with some of the other districts around the state to offer similar services for students throughout the state. So that's our hope. So, any other questions on what we have discussed so far? And thank you. Anytime, just raise your hand. You can ask questions. I tend to miss things.
So going back, those 411 kids that you have, are they also all in Washoe County? Or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, they are
Central
all in
District.
Washoe County.
Okay.
So the last component of our program is our Youth College Internship. This is our bridge program, helping them bridge that transition between high school and college. And what we do, we begin this part with this leadership training or this leadership camp where in May, right before the students graduate, we take them on this camping trip. We take all of our seniors to this camping trip and we really focus on team building, leadership skills. So you can kind of see some of the pictures here. We really try to get them to overcome their fears. So it's interesting because, you know, dealing with seniors, they think they're at the top of the world, right? But then you put them next to this this tower that they have to climb, and then they're like, I don't know if I could do this. Although, you know, you can see the kindergarten side of them come out of it. So we really help them to try to overcome their fears, thinking about what skills they're gonna need to transition from high school to college. But then after that, we offer them 2 free university courses. The first one is like a college intro course where it talks about financial aid. It talks about study skills, the importance of going to class, how to get involved in the college life. And so that first class is our EDU class. It's the introductory course to college. The second one is a class of their choosing that they can take, and usually our students will take either our math or our communications 101, usually an introductory course. The other part of that, though, is we give them a free paid internship on campus during the summer. So we set them up usually based on their interests. So if if they want to go and be a medical student, we try to work with some of the professors on campus to have them be in that building. Now, they might just be doing clerical work, but the fact that they're building relationships and networks already with some of the professors is super important for our students. So at the end of the paid internship, if they complete their hours, they receive a stipend. And that stipend can be used to pay for their tuition, can be used for their books. So again, the whole goal of this is to help them bridge that transition period between high school and college. Any questions on this part? Okay. Now, I just want to play this video. These are some of the testimonials from our students as to what they say has helped them the most about the program. So I just want you to hear it in their own words as to what makes the program so unique.
I think the DFS program has helped me come out of my shell.
Becoming a mentor for the DFS program meant a lot for me because it meant that my experience was going to impact someone else's life.
I didn't expect to be a part of the program for so long. Over the years, as I would see familiar faces and different mentors, continuing to talk to me and reach out to me, it definitely felt like there was somebody in the system that was looking out for me, and it felt nice to have that crutch, especially in high school where I felt like I needed it the most.
The DFS College Student Mentors really are the backbone of our program. They're everything, and I think that's what sets apart the DFS program from any other program in the country is because we grow our own mentors. That's very unique to our program.
And what makes them so special is that they've walked in their shoes. They've come from the same schools, the same neighborhoods, they've been through the process. They know the struggles and the challenges, and they overcame them. They're here at the university, they are working hard, and most importantly, they're giving back.
Mentorship is very important. These kids are able to see people who are going to college, who are graduating from college, that look like them, that are from their communities.
The mentors could really focus in on individual student needs and sort of a checkpoint, a person who cared about whether they were going to class or doing their homework, or ask them what they needed, if they were feeling they needed tutoring or some extra support.
Those kind of things really impact a kid's life. But we've seen those kids become successful when they've had mentors, when they've had support, encouragement. They can do it.
So you probably heard just a couple of things that we have discussed: the importance of a student seeing somebody stick with them for so many years. One of the things that I forgot to highlight is that students that get recommended to the program, we call them our lifers. They, after that, regardless of whether their GPA drops or they have a year where, especially during our COVID years where a lot of our students, we saw them just fail all of their classes, that doesn't mean we kick them out of the program. Once they're in, they receive those services throughout their K-12 experience, because we understand that we're trying to help them. They are going to face certain barriers, and the journey for our first generation students is not easy. So we have to stick with them throughout their whole time, and that's what we try to do. And what we've seen is that there is this turnaround with our students. I can share you my experience. I wasn't the best of students in K-12. I went on to college and I had a rough time. I ended up dropping out, but with Dean's Future Scholars' help, they were able to help me get back into college and graduate with my bachelor's and my master's last year. So that's the nice story, is that the stories for our students is not a straight line. It's not this perfect line that goes from high school to college to graduation. Typically, it tends to be a squiggly line for our students because they're navigating this journey for the first time. But this is what really makes the program unique, in the sense that it starts early. Not many programs start in the 6th grade. Typically, you will see programs begin their 8th grade year onto their high school years. But hooking them early is important. This long-term commitment from the college mentors is also important in the sense that they stick with them. We try to have our mentors stay with their same caseload for at least 4 years, or their whole year, their college years. And I see a question in the back. Okay. There's near-peer mentoring model, and what we have seen is not only do the students benefit from it, but also the mentors themselves. The course advancement and dual credit opportunities, there are programs that offer this, but the fact that we offer this on campus and the students can come on campus and be exposed to the campus, I think is really helpful. Those wraparound services during their academic year, but also in the summers are also key. Not only do the mentors help with tutoring, but they also provide services to the families. So they might have a financial literacy night or a presentation that they offer the family where they can come in. There's also programs for certain students that want to study abroad. There is a new part of the program this year that we're trying to introduce where students can learn a language during their high school years, study for 3 weeks in another country and learn another language to get them interested in different parts that they might experience at their college. So we're really excited about that as well. And then also, we have a student lounge on campus that offers free food, free printing, and we know college, you have to print a lot of stuff, and it can get pricey. But the fact that we offer that for free for our students, and we have a place where they can come and connect with one another and have this sense of belonging, we value that. So, and finally, I think the biggest thing that makes us unique is this family feel. I have students that I mentored when I was a DFS mentor in my undergrad that still come up to me or text me, hey, I need help with this. And they're far into their careers. Some of them are school counselors, some of them are teachers, but they text me and I'm like, hey, you're like 26, 27 years old and you're still coming to me asking me for help. Yes, I'll help you. So, you had a question in the back?
Yeah, what do you guys do with elementary schools? Like, do you have them like hang college banners or stuff like that just to kind of put it in their mind early? Or
Yes, and so again, thinking back to, hopefully you're seeing this thread of this collaboration that with Gear Up and DFS that we have had. We try to have a large presence within the school district, and with our elementary schools, we go in and we do presentations for the schools. We try to have goal setting presentations where we just kind of go in and talk about these SMART goals. What is it? How can we set certain SMART goals where we talk about the process and finding value within that process to get somewhere, right? Those steps. And so at the elementary level, we just try to start building those connections with our teachers, our counselors, our practitioners, but then just getting the students exposed and start thinking about college. I can tell you, as for me, when I was selected in 6th grade, they told me, we're gonna help you go to college. And I was like, okay, like, what is that? I don't care, there's free food here, so this is why I'm coming and giving them my lunchtime, right? But the fact that they just implanted that seed at that early age, I think it influenced me to go to college. And without that, I probably wouldn't be there. So that's what we try to do, is we try to plant that seed early on in the students' minds that college is a possibility for them, that whether there's certain barriers, we can help them overcome those barriers, whether it's with finances or with grades, we can help them overcome those barriers. So, any other questions just on this part? You can see some of our longitudinal data. This is, again, our graduation rates. Our 5-year average typically is around 95 to 100%. I just calculated this, so 97% as of 2001. And then typically we can see that our graduation rates are higher than Washoe County. And they typically, the students also achieve higher rates of honors and advanced diplomas, which I think that is very helpful for our students in their first year. If they can start their first year of college already knocking off some of those credits, it's really helpful for them in trying to graduate in 4 years. Now, this last part is where our analysis comes into play, because I think another large important aspect of any program is taking a look back at the data, taking a look back, taking a moment to reflect, and seeing what is working, what is not working. And so with this collaboration with the university, Dr. Jafes Sanchez, she was our PI for a lot of our studies, and she's a university employee. We can literally go down just the hall and ask her, hey, can you take a look at our data to see if what we're doing is really working with our students? And so she took this exploratory review. Most studies, they will look at the typical demographics, right? Gender, race, whether there are IEPs, limited English proficiency, their grades, and taking a look at those, whether it was successful. Dr. Jafes Sanchez looked at those, but she took it a step further, also looked at the service hours, the GPA that the students achieved, their credits earned, their math level attainment, how many of them enrolled in college, but also took a look at other parts. For example, if the students were eligible for Gear Up, the Gear Up grant, did they access that Gear Up grant? And if they didn't, what was the reason behind it? There was 3 different surveys that were done with the Gear Up students. The first one was done in 7th grade, so we think about that transition. At that time, 6th graders were still at the elementary level. Now our 6th graders are combined at our middle school level, so in middle school now it's 6th, 7th, and 8th. But before, it was a transition from 6th to 7th. So that's why that first survey was done in 7th grade, that transition period from 6th, 7th grade. And then the second one was done at the beginning of their 9th grade year. So that transition from middle to high school, and then in their 12th grade year, as they're beginning to transition to college. And so these surveys were done paper and pencil. They were also done electronically. We had a QR code for the students. to just connect their phones to, or yeah, that was usually the easiest way. They just had their phones. You know, students are very tech savvy nowadays, so they just did their surveys on their phone. And these were just some of the typical questions that were asked. What type of students do you consider yourself? From whom do you get most of your information about continuing your education after high school? What is the highest level of education that you expect to obtain? Do you think you could afford to attend a public four-year college? So we really looked at students' perceptions. Yes?
So you gave them the same survey at every data point?
Yes, at every transition period, same surveys. We're trying to see whether their responses would change. And so this was really the large part of Dr. Jafes Sanchez's review. Yes?
And was it open-ended, or was there like a menu?
It depends on the question. So some of them were specific in the sense, like, for example, what type of student do you consider yourself? They could answer that question very open-ended, in a very open-ended way, but then their responses was then categorized based on what they answered. For who do you go to for most of your information, this one was not open-ended. It gave them a set of, so it could have been from a parent, a friend, a teacher, counselor, your DFS mentor. So that one was not open-ended, but again, yeah, depending on the question, some were, some weren't.
On your demographics, was it self-reported, or what were?
For the demographics, again, we do work with our Office of Accountability to get those. We get data back as to what they have listed as their gender, their race, their ethnicity. Also, on there, we were also able to list whether they were on free and reduced lunch, but we weren't able to, some of the data, we have to wait till they graduated high school to then verify. So whether they were first generation, we couldn't verify that until they graduated high school. And then that's when we received that information. So for the typical demographics, that was not self-reported, that was received actually from the district.
Oh, okay.
So the first test that Dr. Jafes Sanchez put the data through was this sign test. And she took a look at some of the simple programming areas. And again, I have simple in quotations there in the sense that none of these tests are very simple when you actually do them. They're actually very complex, and they deal with a large part of the program, but they're just one simple question. And so the first question that we looked at is what type was, or not I looked at because I didn't do the review, but that Dr. Jafes Sanchez did was, what type of students do you consider yourself? And what she was taking a look at was what they responded to in their 7th grade year, did it change over time? So they might have said they saw themselves as a good or great student. If they saw themselves as a good student, then hopefully by their end of their 12th grade year, they saw themselves as a great student. That would be considered a plus. If they saw themselves as a great student in 6th grade, but then we saw a drop off to where now they said as an okay student or as a bad student, that would be considered a negative, a drop in their response. If they said that they were a great student in 7th grade, and then they said the same thing in 12th grade, that was considered a tie. So that's just one of the ways that we take a look at these responses. And again, there you can see up there, this was done in 7th to 9th grade, their 9th grade to 12th grade, and then an overall 7th to 12th grade year. What we found for the first one was that there were more ties in 9th to 12th grade, but from their elementary, or not elementary years, from their middle school years, we actually saw more pluses. So more student responses changed. And what we saw with that is that early intervention as being important. The second question was, from whom do you get most of your information? And like I said before, this could be from a parent, a teacher, a friend, a DFS mentor. Or what we saw as pluses was a practitioner, somebody that was in education, so a college mentor, teacher, or a counselor. what we consider as a plus. And when we saw that there were more ties out of the whole responses, but our pluses did outweigh our negatives. When we took a look at highest level education that they expected to attain, we did see more ties. Most of the students, 77% of them in 7th grade said that they were going to go to college, they were going to receive a college application, and that stayed consistent throughout. And then, do you think you could afford to attend college? There were more pluses than negatives, but the overwhelming response were ties. Some other data analysis tests that the data was put through were correlation tests. So this is what relationships can you find within the data itself. And the first test was done for service hours by years. So do the service hours have a correlation with student participation, engagement, and what they found was that they were all positively related with each year. And so if we were able to increase the service hours during their middle school years, we were able to engage them, and they were able to, or they were more likely to engage in subsequent years. They were going to come to our college classes, they were going to take our summer school classes, and so service hours had a positive correlation. When we looked at service hours by academic areas, there wasn't really that we found with like GPA or other aspects of that, but what we did find was that it related to higher ACT math scores only. And so, well, an important part to this is that we're gonna take a look at how this service hours by academic area changes in the sense that ACT is no longer recommended by the University in the state of Nevada for entrance. And so it's gonna be interesting to take a look at that aspect now. We also took a look at the t-test. So are there any group differences? Taking a look at those typical demographics, but also as they relate to service hours. Now, there was no connection found to the two, but not just because there is no difference, that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. It's okay to sometimes have no difference. This just simply means that all students are receiving access and equity to all of those services. So with some of these tests, you have to take a look at how they are, or what is the story behind it. When we took a look at college enrollment now, so not just the K-12 experience, but going further, we took a look at how many students were eligible for the Gear Up funds and how many of them assessed their Gear Up funds. So how many of them actually used those funds when they went on to college. Along with that, we worked with the National Clearinghouse and did a search from the University of Nevada, Reno, as to how many of them were enrolled there, what was their degrees, what was their graduation date, whether they were retained or not. And so again, in conjunction to this, is just taking a look at beyond. Did the services that they receive in K-12, did it help them going forward? The first part of that part is we took a look at a snapshot versus the whole group. So just looking at the Gear Up students themselves. Now, at the time, back in 2007 and 2012, there was only a certain cohort of the Dean's Future Scholars students population that were actually dual enrolled and also Gear Up. That has changed in the sense that now every DFS student is also Gear Up that comes into the program. But early on, that partnership with Gear Up was just mainly, okay, we're going to work with students that are going to graduate in 2007 and also work with those students that are going to graduate in 2012. So what we took a look at was, for example, what was the breakdown in demographics? 50% female, 50% male were DFS students, but then also taking a look at that there was 70% female to 30% male Gear Up students that were also Gear Up that were also DFS students that were duly enrolled. So taking a look as to why that was, the studies also found that 80% attended post-secondary education right after high school in 2012. So those are very high when we think about the graduate or the post-secondary attainment within the state. But also, this is an important fact down here is that, for example, taking a look at how many female students received the funds and how many of them actually used it, we can take a look at, there was a total of 45 female Gear Up students, but only 28 actually used the funds. So the whole point that I want to highlight with it is that you can take a look at, for example, these simple program areas to find the hidden stories behind your programming, and then figure out how can you move forward. So if students are not using the Gear Up funds, why is that? How can we move forward from that? If students are seeing themselves as a great student in 7th grade, is that consistent throughout? What about the students that don't see themselves as good students in 7th grade? Is their perception about who they are changing over time? And so looking at this data, it can uncover those hidden stories, even if it's past data. The past data can help you move forward with better outcomes. So, any questions on this part here? Yes?
So did another survey go out or to find out why the students didn't use the funds, or?
So that's the next part. I know they're in this partnership, consistently working to review previous data and then moving forward. Again, this data analysis just came out in recent years. And so there is the hopes of another survey going out to see why that was. The challenging thing is that only the first cohort received those Gear Up grants. So you would have to think back of students that graduated in 2007, try to figure out where they are now in their lives, and then hopefully ask those questions as to why, right? So that's the hopes. But again, that's pretty much the data analysis in a nutshell. There was a lot that goes into it, but hopefully that was helpful to you all. If you're able to collaborate with somebody in your state, or if you're able to do a similar data analysis and exploratory review, it can be very helpful. For us, because we have that foot in K-12 and that foot at the university, we were able to do this exploratory review into the program. So with that said, that's the end of our presentation. If you all have questions, yeah. If not, I thank you all for joining us today.